Hello and welcome back to another episode of Tyler's Tiger Talk. So we're a few days from game day. It's Thursday night, so we're about a day away. The good thing about this 11 a.m. game is you get to wake up on Saturday, eat breakfast, maybe have a little workout, whatever, then go and watch some football. Last year it was Tennessee at LSU, and you had to wake up early for that game, get here for parking. You don't have to do any of that. You get to sit back on the couch or bed, whatever, and watch this game. But like I've been saying, and I said it even before the season start, before I even saw Mississippi State's offense and defense, I talked about how this could be potentially a trap game for LSU. I think LSU is going to win this football game. They're favored to win this football game. Mississippi State is not the greatest team, but LSU has shown that their secondary can't really hang. LSU did a good job against Mississippi State last year of coming back despite being down. You had some big plays, a dropped punt that went LSU's way, a big run from Marnie Goodwin, some big runs from Jaden Daniels, him being your lead rusher in that game. Jaden Daniels went 22 for 37 with 210 passing yards and 93 rushing yards. All year, Jaden Daniels was your lead rusher. In the game versus Mississippi State, Jaden Daniels did terrific on his legs. He was averaging 5.8 yards every time he rushed. I think you use that against Mississippi State still. I think you use that. Jaden Daniels can kill with his legs, not just Mississippi State, but any team. But when you put the weaknesses that Mississippi State have, yes, the past two games, they've been good on stopping the run, but they've also played Southeastern in Arizona. And Arizona threw on them for, 300-something yards, I think 345, something like that. What have a lot of people been saying too, Mississippi State had to win in overtime at home against Arizona. Arizona going into that game was 0-1. So I think this is an easy win for LSU if they execute, if their secondary stays strong. I know the secondary the past few weeks has been a question. FSU threw all over you. Even Grambling threw all over you in the beginning of that game. Can you stop the pass? Mississippi State isn't as pass heavy this year. Not to say they can't still sling the ball. Will Rogers is an experienced and terrific quarterback. He's a veteran. He knows what he's doing. He has had multiple career starts. He knows what he's doing. This team is a little different, though, this year. They've been trying to run the ball. Marks can run the ball. He's a talented running back. But Mississippi State didn't have that. Marks only rushed for 50 yards last year against LSU. LSU's kind of night and day, though, when it comes to running. Sometimes teams can run all over them. Sometimes LSU's great at stopping the run. Grambling executed a very good scheme against LSU. They were able to rush against LSU. I need to pull up that box score. That reminds me. But yes, if LSU can stop the run, I think they can win this game. Mississippi State shows that they wanted to run. And you can make the argument, well, Mississippi State has played two below average teams. Maybe they're not showing that much for when they do play LSU, so they can start passing. Big, huge receiver, Ra Thomas, I want to say his name, was last year, now at Georgia. So you don't have that threat vertically anymore. Not to say Mississippi State can't still pass on you, but I don't think they will. I don't think they'll try. Will Rogers only had 17 passing attempts against Arizona in an overtime game. So there's that. Last year against LSU, he had 42. He was 24 for 42. So, We'll see what Mississippi State tries to bring. Maybe they come out passing. Maybe they don't. You never know. Last year against LSU, they passed a couple, but then Marks had that big rushing touchdown. LSU's offense didn't get really started till the second half. I think LSU scored their first touchdown in that 2-minute offense in the second quarter last year. But this is a different LSU team. There's still so much doubt, right, going around. This is LSU's first SEC play. I think this is a huge game. I think this is your get-back game, depending on how bad you meet Mississippi State. If you crush them, I think that's wonderful. Because you haven't really seen much in the SEC to convince me or a lot of people otherwise that LSU has a definitive loss on their schedule. Besides Alabama, I don't think there's that many teams like Ole Miss, Arkansas that are that great. Ole Miss almost lost to Tulane. Not to say Tulane's not a good football team, but it's Tulane. They almost lost to Tulane last week. Mississippi State had to go to overtime to beat Arizona. I just haven't seen that much talent and skill from any other team in the SEC to where I'm like, LSU's going to go 6-6, like, or 7-5. Like, I just don't see that. I think LSU could for sure win every single game on their schedule. Unlike last year where you were like, this is a toss-up. This is a toss-up. Alabama's a toss-up. And even last year, like, LSU's probably going to lose to Alabama. But you had teams where like, it was like Florida's a toss-up. Arkansas is a toss-up. Like, I just don't see that on the schedule. I think LSU's much more experienced if they can fix their problems in the secondary. Like everyone said, listen, you don't have to have a perfect secondary. LSU hasn't had a perfect defense in years. Even 2019, I mean, Northwestern came to Baton Rouge and scored their first couple drives, touchdowns, drove on LSU in 2019. And that defense had a lot of guys who went to the NFL. You don't have to have an amazing defense or perfect defense, but what LSU has now, it's not going to work, especially in SEC play, no matter who you're playing. But yeah, I think most people think LSU's going to win. I think if you're a Mississippi State fan, you probably figure LSU's going to win this game. But you go back. I think it's huge. I think this game is huge for LSU. If they barely beat Mississippi State, I still think, it's a big game for LSU. I'd like to see LSU dominate because you feel better about the rest of the schedule, especially the rest of your SEC opponents. You play Arkansas at home next week, and they're not that big of a threat. You beat them at home last year. It was a rocky game. You had some guys with the flu, but you still won. It was still a W. LSU, something they haven't done and something they did last year against Mississippi State is get pressure on the quarterback. LSU was incredible against Will Rogers last year, getting pressure on him. You lost some of those guys like B.J. Ojolari, who had a few sacks in that game. But that doesn't mean you can't do it this game. LSU's had one sack, and that was against Grambling last week. Only one sack. Barely got any pressure on Jordan Travis. When you did, it seemed like he escaped it. He's good at that. But LSU needs to get pressure against Will Rogers. He's not a running quarterback. He's a passing quarterback. Last week, you didn't get that much pressure because Grambling's quarterback was good at getting the ball out fast. So LSU needs to get pressure on Will Rogers. It's going to be quick passes for Mississippi State. When they do pass, they like their quick passes over the top, whether it's a slant or a little in route or crossing, whatever. They're going to go for their quick passes. They don't have many receivers or star players on this team, but they can still hurt you. You see it. You see it in the NFL. Perfect example, Patrick Mahomes in the Kansas City offense. That dude, yes, it's Patrick Mahomes, but that dude doesn't have anyone on his team to really help his offense, but he can still kill defenses. It still happens. If you have a good enough quarterback, a good enough scheme, maybe you don't have that many stars on your team, but you can still win games like that. Mississippi State can still win this game. I'm not saying it's totally out of the equation. I even tweeted early today. They showed a few upsets, and it was like LSU versus Mississippi State, this team versus this team. And I said, as an LSU fan, this could be an upset for LSU, especially if Mississippi State does come out passing, which they probably will do, seeing that this LSU team isn't really great in the secondary. I'd like to see LSU have a breakout game to where their secondary looks a lot less vulnerable. I'd like to see, Harold Perkins have a breakout game to where he's getting to Will Rogers and making his life a living hell. I'd like to see LSU stop Mississippi State's rushing offense and make them pass on you and show that your secondary can keep up, because this is scary. It's scary to LSU fans that this is a huge hole in our defense is our secondary. And pass rush. LSU needs to establish pass rushing, stopping the run. They can stop the run, stop big breakout runs. Say if Mississippi State does pass 4-5 yards, keep the ball in front of you. Don't make Mississippi State get in those 3rd and 2 situations to where they have to pass or even run, and try to stop them on 3rd and 2 situations. Because I feel like there's going to be a lot of that where it's going to be 3rd and 1. 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, because Mississippi State's running the ball or throwing the ball short against LSU's defense. Put them in those 3rd down situations where they have to go on 4th down, and then you get big stops. Against Grambling, obviously against Grambling, Jaden Daniels threw a lot more vertically. He had 269 passing yards, 5 TDs, all in the first half. He looked very good passing the ball vertically. Brian Thomas had a drop early in the game. Let's see if the receivers can have a game to where they're not dropping the ball too. That's very frustrating when I see a wide open Brian Thomas or a wide open Kyron Lacey and they're dropping the ball. Despite what everyone says, I like how LSU has been running their offense with short passing. If it's a 5-yard dump off and the running back carries it for 15 more yards, let it be. Who cares? They're driving downfield. If LSU has to run a boring offense but still win the game, don't care. I believe Jaden Daniels is going to try to make some big plays vertically. You have Malik Neighbors against less talented DBs. That might open up some pressure. If Neighbors is double teamed, that leaves Brian Thomas open or Kyron Lacey open or whoever goes downfield. I'd like to see LSU relieve some pressure off Jaden Daniels and see if they can get a rushing game started. I'd like to, LSU has so much talent and depth in the running with their running backs. I mean, just so many guys like John Emery or Diggs who are just power running backs who can hurt you with their legs. I want to see them be successful in the run game. Who am I missing? Josh Williams, Bradford. I mean, there's so much depth in LSU's running game, and you just haven't really seen it. Jaden Daniels seems like he's always the guy when you go to the box score and you look at rushing stats, he's always up there above every running back. I want that to change. Obviously, I'd like to see Jaden Daniels run because you saw it last year. He killed teams with his legs. He's so shifty. He's good at breaking as skinny and tall as he is. He's good at breaking tackles. He's good at getting through finding a gap. And I believe we're going to see that on Saturday. Jaden Daniels using his legs because it works against almost every team, and it really worked against Mississippi State last year. Another thing that I haven't seen a lot is from the tight ends. Mason Taylor's obviously questionable for this game. I think Brian Kelly even said in his press conference today that it's more of a game time decision for Mason Taylor. You haven't really seen a lot from the tight ends, Mason Taylor, or the tight ends. Brian Kelly said he's going to, everyone else is freshmen, so he's going to try out all the freshmen and see what they can do. But I'd like to see, if Mason Taylor does play, I'd like to see some stuff from him, whether it's short dump offs or downfield or contested catching. I'd like to see him get more involved. I'd like to see, and I say this a lot because I truly believe in this, and if I was an offensive coordinator, I would implement it a lot into my game, is running backs and passing. LSU versus Alabama, I want to say this was, can't remember if this was LSU's first drive or second drive. It was a pass to John Emery. I think he broke a tackle or something and ran downfield and almost scored a touchdown against Alabama and their defense. So I'd love to see LSU implement the passing game more for the running backs. Find a guy, whoever it is in that long list of running backs, find a guy who can catch and run downfield. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, short, stocky guy. In 2019, LSU, put him out a lot when it was 5 wide situations. He had that touchdown against Alabama late in the second quarter where it was a few seconds left, and he had a touchdown passing. Because when you're DB, you don't look at the running back as big of a threat is when he's lined up as a receiver. Obviously, LSU doesn't do it much, but I'd like to see them go 5 wide with a running back out there. These receivers are talented, and a lot of the time, especially when you're not playing as many Alabamas or Florida States left on your schedule. I mean, obviously, you got Alabama late in your schedule, but Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Arkansas, all those defenses, I promise you, their DBs, cornerbacks, safeties, their guys aren't as talented as your wide receivers. LSU has a very good wide receivers, whether it's Brian Thomas, he's big, he's physical. Malik Neighbors, he's fast, he knows how to run his routes. Kyron Lacey, all those guys who can catch. You got the speedy Chris Hilton. Those guys are more talented than almost every SEC DB out there. And I believe if you're going 5 wide and you have a lot of those guys out there and you're spreading them out and you're forcing that defense to play man on man, I believe it's going to help LSU. And hopefully they'll show some 5 wide situations. Look out for that, because when you remember what I'm saying right now, if LSU goes 5 wide against Mississippi State, I think they're going to kill them, because it's going to force Mississippi State to bring a lot of more DBs and cornerbacks in than they'd like to. It's going to force them to play more physical. And LSU's, like I said, LSU's guys are more talented and better than Mississippi State's guys. So if they're doubling up Neighbors, it leaves who knows open. Lacey, Hilton, Brian Thomas. I like to see those guys spread out and running across the field. I know LSU likes to keep a lot of protection for Jaden Daniels, but if it's short little routes where, Chris Hilton's going downfield, Brian Thomas running a corner route, and, like Neighbors running a mesh, it forces the defense to think more and it's gonna leave some guys open. So I'd like to see that from LSU, spreading out the offense more. I'd like to see them establish a run game. I'd like to see some of their running backs get some more passing time or more out there as receivers. I think that's going to help. John Emery coming back, obviously, is going to help them. But LSU's run offense needs to be better on the line. Because like I said, LSU does have so much depth at the running back position, but no matter how good their running backs are, it seems like they can't get anything going in the running game. And whether you put Leonard Fournette out there right now or Clyde Edwards-Helaire out there, I don't think LSU's doing that much with their running game with those players in right now. So it's not about how good the running backs are. It's how good the scheme is on offense and how good your O-line is run blocking. Because like I said, these running backs are really good and talented, but there just seems to be no run blocking, especially on the right side. Hopefully that changes. But I'm trying to make sure I'm not missing anything for this game. Make sure I touched on everything. Yeah, it's going to be a fun game. Like I said, it's important for LSU to win this football game. It's important for their confidence. It's important for the rest of the season going forward. You play. I think if you beat Mississippi State in an orderly fashion, you play Arkansas at home. You win against that game. You get rhythm going. A lot of those games where you had to fight and come back, like Arkansas, where you had to fight, or Florida, where you had to fight. A lot of those games are at home now. Florida's at home. Arkansas's at home. You got your fans. Last year, the fans made a difference in the Mississippi State game. It was loud. I was there. It was loud. There was a couple drop passes. Some confusion with Mississippi State's offense. You're not going to have that going into Mississippi State, but you saw what happened last year. What happened last week with Mississippi State and Arizona. Arizona stuck in that game longer than they should have, and I think this is an easy win for LSU if they execute where they haven't been executing, whether it's rushing the quarterback, whether it's getting a run game going, whether it's stopping the opposing offense's passing game. LSU just needs to execute in these things, and this is a huge get back game for LSU, especially if they win it in, like I said, in an orderly fashion. Whether when they're executing, I'd like to see LSU execute, and look more put together because they have the talent. They obviously have the talent, but whether they execute or not is very important because you saw it. LSU beat Florida State in the first quarter, and they really weren't executing. And obviously they lost the game, but you beat a really good Florida State team in that first quarter. There were so many opportunities where you just had bad play calling, and you didn't execute on offense or defense. I mean, that first drive, LSU looked coming out against Florida State. I try not to talk about the Florida State game, but I think it's important because there's so much you can take from that game and implement it into each game going forward. But LSU looked very, very good on that opening drive against Florida State. And you went from most likely scoring a touchdown to scoring nothing at all. And those things can hurt you. I like that LSU struggled scoring the first drive last year. I like to see them score on the first drive. Brian Kelly always when we win the coin toss, he always asks for the ball. So if that happens, LSU gets the ball first. I'd like to see them drive downfield in an orderly fashion and score 7 points. If LSU's defense is not going to do that this year, their offense needs to execute a lot more, because you can't have drives where LSU doesn't score 7 points. I mean, that defense is going to still take a while. It's not going to just be, one game where the defense suddenly gets better. It's still going to take a while. These guys are new to college football. Some of these guys are new to SEC play, so it's going to take a while for that defense and those DBs to get better and learn the game more. But once they do, it gives the offense more leeway. Right now, the offense doesn't have that much leeway. You're calling the offense to go downfield and score 7 points almost every drive. And if they don't do that, the game gets scarier. This is your opportunity, going to Mississippi State, to capitalize. LSU will not be in playoff talks for a while now. It's going to take them beating Alabama, and you don't know what's going to happen with Alabama. If they might lose 1 or 2 more games, you never know. But this is a huge game for LSU, being their first SEC play. They got more competition now. Huge game for them to capitalize and say, hey, we're now 2-1. We're going to kill all the rest of the SEC opponents up until Alabama. And once we get to Alabama, we're going to go to Tuscaloosa and we're going to beat Alabama, because Alabama is not a for sure loss. Last year, it seemed like LSU was going to lose to Alabama. This year, you're not sure. You're not sure if Alabama might lose a couple more of their games. The West is more open than it has been in years, even in 2019. This SEC West is open. You have the potential to go 11-1. I've said LSU is probably going to go 11-1. I wrote it on the board this year before the season started, 11-1. I thought it'd be more likely that one loss would go from Alabama, but got the one loss from Florida State. So I'm excited to see what these receivers can do against this Mississippi State. Like I said, I know people like LSU to go vertical. It's more exciting, but if they have to, go for the short yardage where you're throwing a 5-yard pass. Sometimes you got to play boring. To win games, it's going to be boring. You're going to have better opportunities, but with teams like Mississippi State, sometimes you got to play boring. It's just part of the game. And sometimes you're going to get those opportunities like last year where it was 4th down and 2 and you throw it up to Malik Neighbors and you get a miracle play like that. Sometimes that's going to happen, but a lot of the time it's not. This is a different LSU team than it was a few years ago in 2019 when we're throwing out to Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson. Those are 2 best receivers right now in the NFL. So you don't have those guys anymore. You don't have Joe Burrow. You don't have that O-line in those insane receivers. But you still have talent. You still have something. So I'm excited for this game. I think LSU wins this game. I think if they execute, like I said earlier, if they execute at the things they've been lacking, it's going to be an easy game for them. Might even be a blowout. Remember, LSU beat Mississippi State last year. Mississippi State has struggled. They struggled last week against Arizona at home. I think this is a win for LSU. If you have any questions, comments, or put it down below. I probably, since this is one of those games where you're watching on your couch, it's an early game. I'll probably have an immediate after game video to go out, which is like, it sucks that the game's early, but at least I can make a video on Saturday, which is something rare that I usually don't get to do. But I can make a video Saturday post game. I'm excited. This is a big game for LSU, even though it might not seem like it. It's a bigger game than what people think. It's big for their confidence, confidence booster, and it kind of points LSU in a direction going on to the rest of the season. So leave a like, leave a comment. I love to interact. Consider subscribing. And yeah, as always, go Tigers.